You're not tired because you've done too much. You're tired because you're carrying what was never yours to hold. The noise, the opinions, the unpredictable storms, they drain you. That scattered feeling, it comes from chasing control over things beyond your reach. But peace isn't found out there. It's found within. The moment you shift your focus to what you can command, everything changes and your power quietly begins to rise. In a few moments, you'll understand why your peace, power, and progress depend on focusing only on what you can control. Control begins with awareness. You live every day surrounded by forces you cannot command, weather, traffic, the moods of others. But there's one kingdom that belongs to you alone, your mind. And if you do not rule it, someone or something else will. The man who drifts through life blaming others for his misfortunes, he has not yet discovered his power. But the man who stops, looks inward and declares, "This is mine to control," begins to write his own destiny. Control doesn't begin in the hands. It begins in the mind, with awareness. You may say, but what if the world around me is unfair? Yes, it may be. But what does that change about your next move? Your breath, your posture, your choice to rise? Those are yours. Do not surrender what belongs to you. You must know this. A disciplined mind is a liberated man. When you know what's within your power, you stop chasing shadows and start shaping outcomes. Your awareness is the starting line of all self-mastery. Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow and spend 10 minutes in stillness. No noise, no outside voices, just you and your thoughts. You ask, what can I truly control today? The answers come. My effort, my reactions, my words, my choices. And just like that, your compass sharpens. So ask yourself, have you been living by reaction or direction? Are you being moved like a leaf in the wind, or have you planted yourself like an oak in the earth? A man who knows what he controls walks differently. He speaks with calm certainty. He works without distraction, because his power doesn't come from chance, it comes from conscious command. You must become that man. You own your attitude. There is a power that no man can steal from you. No failure can take, and no misfortune can break. It is your attitude, your perspective, your inner tone. And the moment you realize it's yours, you unlock a strength greater than circumstances. The masses walk around defeated, not because they've lost, but because they've allowed their attitude to lose shape. They wait for things to change so they can feel better. But the wise man, he chooses to feel better so things begin to change. You might say, but how can I control my attitude when I feel overwhelmed? And I ask you, when has overwhelm ever solved itself? Your attitude is the bridge between where you are and where you wish to go. Burn that bridge with negativity and you stand stranded. To control your attitude, begin each day with a declaration. Today I respond with purpose. I greet challenge with poise. I protect my peace. This is not empty talk. It is a contract with yourself, and like any agreement, it must be honored with action. Let's say you walk into a room, and others are complaining, bitter, hopeless. Do you join them or lift the tone? Your attitude is contagious, and if you wield it with intention, you become the thermostat, not the thermometer. So ask yourself, have you been adjusting to the world or adjusting the world around you? Every man faces adversity, but not every man walks through it with dignity. That difference lies in the choice of attitude. Carry yours like armor. Master your morning, command your day. Every day, the world begins again, and the way you step into it decides everything. The man who controls his morning doesn't need to chase success, it begins to chase him. But what do most do? They rise late, they wander into the day with no command, no clarity, no center. They hand their power to chance and wonder why the day defeats them. You, however, must be different. When the sun is low and the world is quiet, you have the greatest opportunity to shape your spirit. In those early hours, you decide what kind of man walks into the world, a drifter or a force. Start simple, rise with discipline, sit with silence, think with direction, speak to yourself with strength. These small victories are not small at all. They are the bricks that build an unshakable mind. Picture this. You rise while the world sleeps. You stretch. You think. You write your goals. You prepare your clothes. You review your commitments. You do not race. You align. And when the day begins, you are not surprised. You are prepared. Now ask yourself, how often have you handed your day to chance? What if you reclaimed the first hour as your own? What would shift in your confidence, your pace, your presence? The men who command great fortunes often began by commanding their mornings. The man who wins is not necessarily the fastest, but the one who prepares with the most consistency. The morning is your throne. Sit on it with intention. Respond, don't react. It is not what happens to you, but how you answer it that defines the outcome. And most men live on strings, pulled by every external event, every comment, every delay. That is not control. That is captivity. There's a difference between reaction and response. Reaction is fast, emotional, often regretted. Response is deliberate, calm, controlled. The man who reacts is ruled. The man who responds is the ruler. You may say, but sometimes I can't help it, and that is where you must grow. You can help it, but only if you train your mind before the storm arrives. Emotional discipline is not born in the moment. It is forged in the morning, sharpened by stillness and tempered by reflection. You are not a puppet. You are not a leaf in the wind. You are a thinking, choosing being. And every moment you pause and ask, is this worthy of my energy? You regain your power. Imagine you're insulted. A man speaks harshly. Your pride flares. But instead of striking back, you smile, you measure, you respond with wisdom. Who then is in control? You are. And you win, not by overpowering, but by mastering yourself. So ask, do you lead your emotions or follow them? Do you give power to every irritation or choose where your attention goes? To respond instead of react is to rise above the noise. It is to carry yourself like a man of thought, not impulse. And in that space between stimulus and response, there lies your greatness. Focus on effort, not outcome. Every man wants results, wealth to command freedom, achievement to stand tall, recognition to be seen and remembered. But what most men chase is the fruit, forgetting that fruit does not grow without roots. The applause, the riches, the victories, they are all outcomes. The real work lies beneath the surface, hidden from sight, where effort is planted and watered day by day, season after season. You do not control the fruit, you control the soil, the seed, the hand that works the ground. Many abandon their dreams too early, mistaking silence for failure and delay for denial. They look for instant proof that their work matters, and when the proof doesn't come quickly, they panic. They quit, but they forget. You cannot force a tree to bloom on your schedule. You cannot bully nature, but you can show up daily to tend to the process. You can till the ground again and again, knowing that your power lies not in the harvest, but in your commitment to plan. And then you ask, but what if I fail? But failure is not defined by results. Failure is defined by your response to resistance. If you gave all that you had, your focus, your energy, your consistency, then you did not fail. You endured the drought. You weathered the storm. Perhaps what you call failure is just success still under construction. That's why you must fall in love with effort, not as a means to an end, but as a way of life. Discipline must be built around the doing, not the reward. The man who trains when no one watches, the writer who writes though unread, the craftsman who perfects his trade in silence. These are the builders of greatness. They don't wait for praise. They become the kind of men who don't need it, because effort sharpens them, shapes them, prepares them for the moment the world finally takes notice. But ask yourself honestly, have you been playing to win or playing to be seen winning? Have you measured your worth by results instead of repetitions? If so, return to the beginning, back to the grind, back to the act of giving your best, even when no reward shows up. Don't wait to be validated. Don't wait for numbers, trophies, or claps. Let effort itself validate you. When you do that, when you work as if the outcome is none of your concern, you become dangerous, untouchable, consistent through every season. The world eventually bends to those who outlast its silence. So rise, work, repeat. Focus on what you do, not what it gives you. That is the path. That is the way. And in time, the fruit will follow. Direct your thoughts or be directed by them. You think thousands of thoughts each day, flickers of feeling, bursts of memory, waves of fear, sparks of ambition. But pause and ask yourself, how many of those thoughts do you actually choose? How many are truly yours, born from clarity and purpose? And how many simply arrive, like strangers walking through the doors of your mind, uninvited, unexamined, untrained? Most men live under the illusion that they are thinking, when in reality they are simply receiving, passive to the mental chatter that rules their emotions, moods, and decisions. A man who does not master his thinking becomes a leaf in the wind, tossed from strength to weakness, from confidence to confusion, not because his environment changed, but because his thoughts did. The world can remain the same, but your interpretation of it can rise or fall based on the quality of thought you allow. If you do not seize the reins of your own mind, something else, fear, resentment, laziness, and those forces are not builders of greatness. That's why you must command the first thought of the morning and the final one before you sleep. These are not just passing ideas. They are the sentries of your mindset. If you wake with despair, your day begins in darkness. If you sleep with resentment, your dreams breed unrest. Guard these thresholds. Plant strength in the morning. Sow peace at night. But what if I can't control what I think, you ask? The truth is, you may not stop every thought from arriving, but you can choose which ones to entertain. You can train your inner world like a warrior trains with his blade. Study wisdom. Meditate in silence. Reflect, write, read. Speak powerfully to yourself. Reject the thought that weakens you, because your thoughts are the lens through which you interpret everything. If the lens is cracked, every opportunity looks like a threat, every blessing like a burden. But if the lens is clean, focused, and trained on truth, then even pain becomes a teacher. Even pressure becomes a platform. Picture yourself walking through your day, and suddenly a thought whispers, "I'm not good enough." In the past, you would have submitted to that voice, but now you pause. You dispute it. You replace it. "I am capable. I am becoming." That one act, small in appearance, is revolutionary in impact, because in that moment, you are in control. Not the fear, not the past, you. But time doesn't return. Once it slips through your fingers, it is gone forever. Time is not your servant. It is your capital. It's the most valuable currency you will ever own. And like all wealth, it must be protected, multiplied, and invested. Ask any man who has built anything that lasts. A business, a legacy, a reputation, and he will tell you the same thing. I guarded my hours like treasure. I said no more than I said yes. I built my days with discipline. I did not live on accident. I lived by design. You may say, "But I'm busy." And I ask you, busy doing what? Are you busy digging for diamonds or digging ditches for other people's dreams? Are you pouring your hours into what matters or simply leaking time into the hands of others? Because not all effort is equal. You can work yourself into exhaustion and still move in circles. What matters is not how much you do, but what you choose to do. Until you begin to treat each hour as sacred, your life will remain a maze of distractions, unfinished tasks, and dreams that never take form. You cannot command how many years you will live, but you can command how deeply and deliberately you live today. That power is always yours, and it begins with clarity. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Don't bury yourself in to-do lists that only serve to make you feel busy. Begin with simplicity. Wake up and ask, what truly matters today? Who deserves your presence, your attention, your energy? Which three things, if done well, will move your future forward? Picture a man rising in the early morning, before the noise of the world begins. He opens his journal, not to list 20 scattered tasks, but to choose three vital actions, 3 pieces of work that align with his values, his purpose, his direction. And then he begins. No wandering, no giving away his focus to things that don't serve him. At the end of the day, he feels no guilt, no regret, because though he did few things, they were the right thing. Now ask yourself honestly, are you merely counting your hours, or are you making your hours count? Are you using your time to build something, or are you just filling the void? Most men live in reaction, responding to everything, choosing nothing. But the great ones, they decide. They claim their time, like warriors claim territory. If you do not assign purpose to your time, someone else will, and they will spend it for you, often for goals that do not serve your vision. Meetings, obligations, endless noise. You must learn to say no. You must learn to rule the clock, not be ruled by it. Because your time, once gone, becomes your memory. Your life is made of days, and your days are made of decisions. Guard them like gold, because they are. Speak only what serves your growth. Words shape worlds, and not in some poetic, abstract way, but in the most practical, tangible sense. Every word you speak, especially the ones spoken about yourself, plants something, a thought, a belief, a direction. When you say, "I can't," you sow a seed of hesitation. When you say, "I'm not good enough," you cultivate limitation. But when you speak strength, even when you feel weak, you begin to awaken a deeper part of yourself, a part that listens, a part that builds. You may not see it instantly, but every sentence you speak is shaping the soil of your future. Most men don't realize they are destroying their own power through casual, careless speech. It's too late for me. This is just how I am. People like me don't win. These aren't just expressions. They're affirmations. They're declarations. Spoken not once, but hundreds of times until they harden into belief, and belief becomes behavior. And behavior, repeated, becomes identity. That's why some men never change. Not because they can't, but because their words won't let them. But I'm just being realistic, you say. No, you're being trained by fear, and you're calling it realism. Realism does not mean shrinking your vision to match your current circumstances. It means recognizing where you are without giving up on where you could go. Be realistic, yes, but be realistic about your potential, not your limitation. Speak the truth, but make sure it's the highest truth, not the laziest excuse. Don't speak from the floor. Speak from the summit, even if you haven't climbed there yet. That's how men rise. To control your words is to control your direction. Begin with the voice that no one hears, the one inside your own mind. Your self-talk isn't just background noise. It's the steering wheel of your consciousness. Every day you are either talking yourself into action or out of it, into hope or out of it, into growth or into decay. Speak as if your future self is listening, because he is, and what you tell him becomes the road he walks. Imagine this. A man is struggling through a challenge. He's exhausted. The progress is slow, the path unclear. The old version of him would say, "I'm stuck. This isn't working. Why bother?" But now something in him has changed. He hears those words arise, but he replaces them. "I'm learning," he says. "I'm being sharpened." That one act, simple, silent, redirects his mind, rewires his posture, and slowly but surely reshapes his results. Ask yourself, would you speak to your child the way you speak to yourself? Would you tell your son that he's a failure, that he's late in life, that he'll never figure it out? No. You'd lift him. You'd affirm his effort. You'd remind him of what's possible. Then why treat yourself any differently? The man within you is still growing, still becoming. Speak to him with the same belief you'd give to someone you love. Words are not just air. They are instruments of creation, tools of construction, and sometimes tools of destruction. That's why silence is better than weakness. If you have nothing strong to say nothing. But when strength does speak, let it roar, let it declare, let it build a scaffolding around your vision, one sentence at a time. When you say, "I will find a way," something in you starts looking. A door cracks open. But the moment you say it's over, that same part of you stops. That's the power of the tongue. It is a builder or a barrier. So guard it. Speak only what builds. Speak only what strengthens. Speak only what serves your highest self, not your lowest mood. Declare your direction out loud daily. I will become who I was born to be. I am rising. This moment is shaping me. These are not empty words. They are codes your subconscious obeys. Your tongue holds the weight of your future, and in every hour you get to decide. Will you use it to tear down or to build? Make your words your allies. Make them your weapons, and use them wisely. Because your life and the world around you is listening. Choose your circle with intention. No man rises alone. Behind every triumph is a voice that encouraged, a hand that steadied, a presence that believed, and behind every quiet failure is often a chorus of doubt, a circle of smallness, a network that drained instead of built. You must understand this deeply. The people around you are never neutral. They are either sharpening your edge or dulling your drive. They are either feeding your fire or dampening your flame. This truth is not optional. It is foundational. If your inner world is built by thought, then your outer world is shaped by those you allow into it. Surround yourself with complainers, and you will find complaint slipping into your own speech. Walk daily with the small-minded, and slowly you'll begin folding your ambition to match their comfort. It won't happen all at once. It will happen subtly. A joke here, a discouraging word there, the casual talk that normalizes mediocrity, the quiet pressure to stay small so others won't feel uncomfortable. That is why you must choose your circle with the same intensity that you choose your thoughts. If a man can ruin his life with the wrong mindset, he can also ruin it with the wrong company. You cannot always control who is in your home, your office, your neighborhood, but you can absolutely control who shapes your mindset, who earns your trust, who shares your space of vulnerability and vision. You may ask, but what if I'm surrounded by negativity? And I say, It's time to build boundaries. Being around negative people does not mean you must absorb their mindset. You don't have to absorb what you hear. You don't have to participate in what poisons. Every man owes the world kindness. But you owe your future more than just kindness. You owe it protection. Protect your energy. Protect your vision. Be polite, but be precise. Engage without entangling. Listen without surrendering. And beyond protection, there is a deeper task. Build a better circle. Find those who think boldly, who speak with purpose, who challenge you to stretch your limits. Those rare souls who don't mock growth, but mirror it. The ones who, when you say a goal, don't flinch, but lean in. These are not just friends. They are amplifiers. They multiply your mission even when you're silent. They see your next level even when you're stuck at the current one. Imagine this. Once a week, you sit with two men. No gossip, no empty noise, just three minds locked in on growth. You speak your goals out loud. You hold one another accountable. You dissect your progress, your habits, your vision, and then you part ways. Sharper, bolder. Over time, this becomes a rhythm. And in that rhythm, something shifts. You think clearer. You act faster. You no longer fear the big idea because you are no longer alone in it. That is the power of alignment. That is the force of iron sharpening iron. So pause and ask yourself, who in your life sharpens you? Who lifts your thinking, your standards, your speech? Who do you become when you're around them? And just as importantly, who do you become when you leave? These are not small questions. These are the questions that define your trajectory. Loyalty is a noble thing. But when loyalty turns into self-betrayal, it becomes a trap. There is no honor in staying loyal to people who stunt your growth, who laugh at your dreams, who do not want to see you rise unless they rise first. You were not born to carry dead weight. You were born to build, and to build, you need hands that help. The right circle isn't always the loudest in the room. They aren't the ones seeking attention or applause, but they are the strongest. They move in truth. They speak with clarity. They see through fear. And if you cannot find such a circle, build it. Be the man who sets the tone, who gathers others not around entertainment, but around elevation. One man with a vision can lift a room, but a table full of visionaries, they can change the world. Choose your circle the way a king chooses his counsel, not by comfort, but by alignment. Your life will reflect the quality of the minds you keep around you, so choose wisely. Your future depends on it. Let go of what you can't control. The man who tries to control everything ends up controlling nothing. He clings to outcomes, monitors the moods of others, obsesses over how things should go, and lives in a state of mental siege. Every deviation from his plan feels like betrayal. Every delay feels like defeat. And every moment he cannot control becomes a threat to his sense of identity. He wants certainty in a world made of wind. He wants guarantees in a life built on motion. And so he tightens his grip, thinking it will keep things from falling apart. But the opposite happens. He falls apart instead. You were not made to carry the weight of everything. You were made to carry what is yours. And carry it well. Your thoughts, your words, your effort, your reactions. That is your domain. That is your responsibility. That is your power. But the moment you step outside that realm and begin trying to control what is not yours, people's approval, the pace of life, the opinions of strangers, the twists of fate, you forfeit your peace and you forfeit your power. The irony is this: the tighter you grip what isn't yours to hold, the more it slips. And the looser your grip becomes on your own choices, the more life begins to drift, scatter, and spiral. When you obsess over things outside your command, your attention becomes diluted. Your energy spreads thin. You become reactive instead of proactive, and the very stability you crave becomes impossible to create. You might say, "But I need this to work out." Of course you do. It's human to want success, harmony, progress, but must it break your spirit if it doesn't? Must it shatter you if the outcome strays from the plan? There's a line between determination and desperation, between vision and control. You must learn the sacred art of surrender, not as weakness, not as giving up, but as giving back what was never yours to begin with. Surrender is not silence, it is not apathy, it is clarity. It is choosing to place your effort in the fire, but not demand that the flame burn your way. It is showing up fully, acting with integrity, speaking with courage, and then releasing the outcome. It is detaching from the results and reattaching to the process, because that's where your strength lives. Release the outcome. Focus on the effort. Release the reaction of others. Focus on your response. Release the noise. Focus on the signal. The more you return to this rhythm, the more your life aligns with inner peace. Not because everything goes your way, but because you go your way, regardless of how things unfold. Picture this. A man works tirelessly on a dream. He gives it his all. He prepares, he prays, he puts every ounce of honest labor into it, but the result? It disappoints. The outcome slips from his grasp, but instead of spiraling into bitterness, he exhales. He steadies himself, and he says, I did what I could, and I will do it again better. That night, he sleeps soundly, no regrets gnawing at his mind, no shame poisoning his heart. And the next morning, he rises stronger. He refines his approach. He tries again. That man doesn't just survive, he wins. Not because he controlled the world, but because he mastered himself. Now ask yourself, how much of your suffering comes from trying to control what's uncontrollable? How many days have you ruined chasing the approval of someone who will never see your worth? How many nights have you lost worrying about futures that never came? How many dreams have you delayed by obsessing over perfect conditions? What would happen if you let go of what isn't yours? Let go of the opinions that were never yours to control. Let go of the past mistakes that you've already learned from. Let go of the imagined futures that exist only as shadows in your mind, and instead reclaim what is yours, your effort, your integrity, your attention. Watch how quickly life begins to shift. Peace does not come from fixing everything. Peace comes from knowing what you're meant to fix and leaving the rest. Some battles are not yours. Some storms are not meant to be calmed by your hand. But your discipline, your courage, your ability to remain grounded while the world shakes, that is within reach. The paradox is this. The man who masters what is his finds that more of life starts to align, not because the world bows to him, but because he's no longer bowing to it. He is anchored, composed, focused, and in a world of chaos, that kind of presence is rare and powerful. Let go of everything you were never meant to control. Focus on what is yours. Give it your full strength, and then release the rest. And if you can do that, you've already won. Discipline is your greatest freedom. You may believe that freedom means doing what you want, when you want, how you want. It sounds appealing. No rules, no limits, no schedule, just movement guided by mood, desire, and whim. But that is not freedom. That is drifts. And the man who drifts eventually finds himself owned by whatever pulls hardest, his urges, his emotions, his circumstances. He becomes reactive instead of proactive, carried by the current rather than walking his own path. Drift masquerades as freedom, but in truth it is slavery. Slavery to chaos, to inconsistency, to weakness. True freedom begins the moment you choose discipline. When you say, this is what I must do, regardless of how I feel, you stop being a servant to life and begin to master it. That is the line where boys become men, where dreamers become doers, where potential becomes power. Discipline is the price of sovereignty. It is not a cage. It is the key that unlocks your capacity. The world bows to the man who controls himself. You might say, but I don't always feel motivated. And you would be right. No man does. Motivation is a visitor. It arrives without warning and leaves without notice. You cannot build a life on something so fickle. Discipline, however, is a resident. It shows up daily. It keeps working when feelings fade. It doesn't ask for your permission. It simply does the work. Motivation knocks, but discipline builds the house, keeps it clean, and opens the door, even when the world outside is cold and unforgiving. Discipline is not restriction, it is release. It releases your potential from the prison of procrastination. It releases your energy from being wasted on things that do not serve you. It releases your time from being devoured by distractions. It focuses your mind. It sharpens your purpose. It removes the noise, so only the signal remains. The man who practices discipline is not bound, he is unleashed. Picture this. A man rises each morning at the same time, not because he is forced to, but because he has decided to. The night before he planned his day, not a long list of scattered tasks, but a short list of meaningful action. He does not wait to feel ready. He begins. He works while others wait. He trains his body, not out of vanity, but out of respect. He feeds his mind with ideas that build, not noise that numb. And every step, every action, every repetition he performs deepens his foundation. He's not perfect. He's committed. He doesn't say, do I feel like it? He says, what must be done? That man becomes unstoppable. Ask yourself honestly, Have you been waiting to feel ready, or have you been choosing to be ready? Have you been hoping that ease will find you, or preparing for the long path of endurance? Because discipline does not whisper promises. It demands decisions. It asks for today, then tomorrow, then the next. And in time, the man who answers finds himself standing in a place others only dreamed of. Not because he was gifted, but because he chose. Discipline is the chisel that shapes the man you could be. Without it, your goals are just sketches. Your intentions are just talk. Your dreams are just clouds. But with it, those sketches become sculpture. Those intentions become action. Those dreams begin to take shape. The man who picks up that chisel every day, no matter how he feels, eventually carves a life that no storm can break. And here's the best part. It's within your control. You don't need to be born with it. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to be the smartest, the fastest, or the strongest. You need resolve. You need decision. You need to act and act again, even when you'd rather rest, even when no one's watching, especially then. Discipline makes you trustworthy to yourself. It teaches you that you can follow through, that your word has weight, that your future is not in the hands of fate, but forged by your habits. You begin to respect yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you're in command. And from that command, confidence is born. Choose discipline, not because it's easy, because it isn't, but because it makes everything else easier in time. The hard work you do today becomes the strength you carry tomorrow. The structure you build today becomes the freedom you enjoy later. You may sweat, you may struggle, but you will never regret it. And once you taste the power of discipline, once you feel the sharpness it gives your mind, the clarity it brings to your goals, the momentum it breathes into your days, you will never want to live without it again. You will look back on the days of drift and wonder how you ever survived, because now you are no longer ruled by impulse. You are ruled by purpose, and that, at last, is true freedom. Keep your promises to yourself. There is no bond more sacred, more defining than the one between a man and his word. Not just the promises he makes to others, but the quiet commitments he whispers to himself when no one is listening. These private promises, often overlooked, hold the real weight. Because while it's easy to honor your word in public when eyes are watching, the true measure of a man is what he does in solitude. That's where confidence is either forged or fractured. That's where self-respect is either built or betrayed. When you say, "I'll wake up early," and then sleep in, you may think it's harmless, but in truth, you chip away at your own power. The world might never know, but you do. Each time you break a promise to yourself, it becomes a subtle wound, small perhaps, but cumulative. It spreads like a quiet corrosion, and over time, these fractures erode your ability to believe in your own voice. Confidence doesn't come from compliment. It doesn't come from external validation. It comes from one thing, keeping your word to yourself. When you say, "I'll do it," and then you do, something powerful happens. You start to trust yourself. And when a man trusts himself, he becomes unstoppable. He no longer hesitates. He no longer needs motivation. He becomes a force, not because others say so, but because he knows so. You might dismiss it. It's just a small thing, you say. But no, every promise is a seed, and every seed becomes a tree. When you plant excuses, you grow indecision. When you plant neglect, you grow weakness. But when you plant integrity, even in the smallest things, you grow strength, consistency, and inner alignment. And that harvest changes everything. Picture this. You make a simple vow to walk every day. It's not grand. It's not complicated. Day 1, you walk. Day 2, you don't feel like it. Your legs are sore. Your mind says, skip it. But you walk anyway. Day 3, it rains. Still, you walk. And on day 10, it's not even a question. The weather doesn't matter. Your mood doesn't matter. Why? Because the decision has already been made. You no longer negotiate with weakness. You just do. That's the power of consistency. That's the shift that occurs when your word becomes law. The man who keeps promises to himself walks differently. Not with arrogance, but with alignment. He doesn't need to convince others of his strength. His presence speaks for him. He doesn't need applause. His discipline affirms him. He speaks less because he knows talk is cheap. He acts more because his actions are built on substance. And each step he takes reinforces one message: I am who I say I am. Now, stop and ask yourself, what promises have you been breaking? How many times have you told yourself, I'll begin, only to delay? How many times have you declared change only to retreat into comfort? This is not about shame. This is about reclaiming your own authority. Because your life doesn't transform through external shifts. It transforms through internal contracts, honored, not forgotten. Imagine your life if, for the next 30 days, you kept every promise you made to yourself, no matter how small, no matter how inconvenient. Imagine the strength you'd feel knowing that your words had weight, not just to others, but to you. That kind of trust rewires your mind. It grounds your spirit. It turns hesitation into habit. And in a world full of broken promises, you become rare. You become someone you can depend on. That's the beginning of quiet power, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need affirmation. It lives in your bones. It carries you through storms. It shields you from the noise of the world. And the beauty of it? You don't need talent. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need anyone's permission. You need only this: to say what you mean and do what you say. No, you can't control every outcome. Life will still surprise you. Plans will still shift. But you can control your promises. You can control whether or not you show up. You can control how honest you are with yourself. That's where real growth begins. That's where confidence is born. Not from being perfect, but from being reliable. So start there. Start with one vow, one simple doable act. Keep it, then keep the next. And slowly, quietly, you will become the kind of man whose word carries weight. Not because the world tells you so, but because your soul does. Keep your word to yourself. It is the beginning of all transformation. Let action replace overthinking. You don't need more time to think. You've done enough of that. You've examined every angle, weighed every outcome, anticipated every risk. You've convinced yourself that thinking is preparation, but what it's really become is protection, and not the kind that shields you, but the kind that stalls you. Because beyond a certain point, thinking becomes hiding. You wrap your fear in logic. You dress up hesitation in analysis. And you convince yourself that you're being wise, when in truth, you're just delaying the inevitable. You're waiting for a moment that will never arrive, complete certainty. But greatness does not live in certainty. It lives in motion, and you cannot think your way into excellence. You must act your way there, boldly, imperfectly, repeatedly. That is the path. You might say, but I'm not sure what the right step is. Of course you're not. No man is. That's not a flaw. That's a feature of life. The right step is rarely clear in the beginning. It often only reveals itself in motion. You step forward while afraid. You reach while unsure. You leap while doubting. And only then, only in movement does the fog begin to lift. There is a law, ancient and absolute. Momentum defeats fear every time. A man in motion sees what a still man never will. He learns faster. He sees the terrain as he walks it. He sharpens his instincts by moving through real experience, not imagined outcomes. Fear has no oxygen when you're moving forward. Doubt can't keep up with decisive action. And overthinking? Overthinking is the lie that sounds like wisdom. It seduces you with a false sense of safety. It tells you to wait, to perfect, to plan just a little more. But while you sit there polishing a strategy, someone else is out there building, trying, failing, adapting, winning. Real wisdom knows the difference. It knows when to reflect and when to leap. Wisdom isn't overthinking. It's the ability to act with just enough clarity and trust that the rest will come in motion. Picture this. You've had an idea, a dream, a move you know you need to make. It's been on your mind for weeks, maybe months. You've refined it, adjusted it, imagined the perfect version of it, but you haven't done it. Not really. You haven't taken the first step. You haven't put it in the world. Then one morning, something inside shifts. You don't overthink. You don't analyze. You act. You write the first line. You make the call. You open the door. You send the message. You move. And something electric happens. Energy returns. Doubt shrinks. Resistance weakens. The heaviness lifts. Not because you figured it all out, but because you didn't wait. That's the power of action. It generates its own fuel. It opens doors that planning never could. It invites momentum, and momentum is what turns effort into elevation. So ask yourself now, how much of your life have you spent getting ready? How many moments have you delayed in the name of someday? How many dreams have you quietly buried beneath the phrase, I just need to think it through? Be honest. That illusion of readiness, it has cost you time, energy, and growth. And the antidote? Action. Any action. Action humbles you. It brings you face to face with real feedback. It burns away fantasy and replaces it with form. You don't become great by knowing. You become great by doing. Action tests you. It pushes you. It makes you gritty. And most of all, it proves to the world and to yourself that you are not just another dreamer. You are a doer. That is the mark of all who build real lives. They don't wait to feel ready. They act and become ready in the process. Because thinking without action, that's a cage. You sit inside your mind and call it progress, but you're not free. You're trapped in what ifs and maybes and could be's. On the other hand, action, even without the perfect plan, is freedom. It breaks the chains. It moves the story forward. It gives you data. It gives you direction. It gives you a new version of yourself to work with. So the next time your mind says, wait, your heart must say, go. When your logic says later, your spirit must say now. You can adjust as you go. You can learn on the way, but you cannot begin unless you begin. The truth is, you will never feel perfectly ready. That feeling is a myth. What you need is not more certainty, but more courage. So act. Start small if you must, but start today, now. The rest will follow. Clarity will catch up. Strength will multiply. The path will open beneath your feet, not because it was always there, but because you dared to walk it. Refuse to complain about what you permit. If you allow it, you accept it. And if you accept it, you forfeit your right to complain. That is the law of self-responsibility. It is a law many resist because it demands too much. It asks not for comfort, but for courage. It calls out the quiet complicity we often hide beneath the noise of our complaints. You cannot change what you continue to excuse. And yet, that is precisely what most people do. Defend what drains them, justify what hurts them, and tolerate what weakens them. Look around. You'll hear it everywhere. The man who says his job is suffocating him but shows up each day, year after year, offering nothing but sighs and sarcasm. The professional who despises their habits, their health, their situation, yet takes no steps, not even the smallest, toward change. The language is always the same. It's just how things are. What can I do? It's not fair. And maybe it's not fair. Life isn't always balanced. But fairness isn't the question. Agency is. The real question is, what will you do about it? Because every time you complain, you feed the thing you claim to despise. You breathe energy into it. You reinforce its position in your life by making it the centerpiece of your focus. Complaining feels active, but it's passive. It creates the illusion of progress without any of the substance. Action, even the smallest action, reclaims that power. It disrupts the cycle. It signals that you are no longer interested in suffering with style. You are interested in change. Picture this clearly. Two men, both in the same job. Both feel unfulfilled. Both feel restless. The first man comes home each evening and vents. He talks about the toxic culture, the dull routine, the lack of recognition. He complains to his friends, to his partner, even to strangers. He's always frustrated, always tired, but never moving. The second man feels the same frustration, but instead of ranting, he retools. He picks up a book on weekends. He signs up for a course. He writes down ideas, maps out steps, sends a few emails. Each day, he chisels away at a new reality. 6 months pass. One man is still stuck, still angry, still waiting for something external to change. The other? He's in a different role, or a new company, or halfway through a personal project that's starting to show promise. What separated them? Not talent, not luck, response. One complained, one changed. And now ask yourself with honesty, where in your life have you been choosing the path of complaint over the path of correction? What patterns have you tolerated that silently hollow you out? What conversations do you keep avoiding? What boundaries have you failed to set? What disciplines have you abandoned? All while pretending you're helpless. You are not powerless, but you may be passive. And passivity is not a condition, it's a choice, a quiet, corrosive one. The moment you choose to stop pretending, to stop waiting for permission or perfection, that's the moment everything begins to shift. The moment you say, I will no longer permit this, you take back control. You reclaim your authority over your life. From there, you can plan, you can prepare, you can pursue. But none of that begins until you stop making room for what you claim to want gone. You don't need to fix it all today. That's another lie we tell ourselves, that unless we can fix everything, we shouldn't start anything. Don't believe it. Start small, start simply, but start. Because the only thing worse than staying stuck is telling yourself the story that you have no choice. That's not humility, it's self-betrayal. You have a choice in what you accept. You have a say in what continues. You have a voice. And the longer you silence that voice under the weight of excuses, the longer you delay the life that could be yours. Standards don't rise from complaining, they rise from action. And the more you act, the more your standards evolve. The more you change, the more your life bends in the direction of that change. So let the world keep talking. Let others wait. Let the noise rage. But you don't complain. You correct. You confront. You choose. Because you are no longer interested in telling the same story to anyone who will listen. You are interested in writing a new one. Refuse to complain, choose to change. It's not just a mantra, it's a way of life. One that lifts you from the shadows of frustration into the light of agency. One that replaces blame with boldness. One that replaces passivity with power. Because your life, in the end, will rise to meet the level of what you no longer tolerate. Build grit through small daily hardships. Strength is not forged in applause, nor is it born from ease. It is not built in the spotlight or in moments of glory. Real strength takes root in the shadows, in the quiet hours, when no one is watching, when the rewards are distant, and when quitting would be the simplest thing to do. These are the moments that define a man. Not the ones when he stands on stage, but the ones when he stands alone, when he feels tired, uninspired, and tempted to retreat. It is in those small, silent battles that grit is formed, and it is those unseen victories that determine whether he will rise or falter when the storm arrives. You can wait for life to toughen you, and make no mistake, it will. Life has its own brutal training program. It will press, stretch, and break you if you're not ready. But there is another path, a higher one. You can choose to toughen yourself. You can step into discomfort before it finds you. You can build resilience not out of necessity, but out of choice. And that choice, made daily, puts you ahead of the storm. When you prepare in peace, you don't panic in pressure. When you train in discomfort, you don't collapse in crisis. You might say, but I don't have much to give right now. And I'll tell you, that's exactly why you must give what you can. Because it's easy to show up when life is smooth, when energy is high, when motivation is present. But those aren't the days that build anything lasting. True grit is born when the body is weary, the mind is clouded, and the soul whispers, just rest. That's when it counts. That's when your character is being carved, blow by blow. You don't need a battlefield to grow strong. You don't need to wait for tragedy or turmoil to discover your toughness. What you need is a quiet, consistent practice. Do one hard thing each day, not because it will change everything instantly, but because it will change you. Slowly, steadily, brick by brick. You build strength not by seeking suffering, but by choosing controlled discomfort, by doing the thing you'd rather avoid. That's where your power lives. Wake up 10 minutes earlier than your comfort allows. Take the cold wash even when everything in you craves warmth. Lift the heavy object, not because you want to, but because you said you would. Walk the extra distance instead of taking the shortcut. Deny the second plate when your hunger is more habit than need. Finish the project, the chore, the task you've been avoiding. Each action, small in the moment, compounds over time. Each one a strike against weakness. Each one a signal to yourself, I can do difficult things. Picture this, a man rises before dawn. He climbs a steep hill every morning. It's not for recognition. No camera follows him. No applause greets him. He does it because it sharpens him, because it reminds him of who he is. Each step tells him, you are stronger than yesterday. And then one day life throws a real mountain in his path, a crisis, a collapse, a test, but he doesn't flinch because he's already practiced the climb. He's already met resistance on his terms. And because of that, he doesn't just survive, he endures, he overcomes. Ask yourself this, and ask it daily. What small discomfort could I lean into today? Where have I been softening when I should be strengthening? Where have I chosen the easy path, not because it was right, but because it was comfortable? Grit is not a gift. It is not something you're born with. It doesn't come from speeches or theories. It is not inherited. It is earned. And it is earned in the daily quiet refusal to fold, in the small decision to keep going when everything says stop. It is earned when no one claps, when no one sees, and when no one cares, except you. And here's the truth most people avoid. Those who build grit silently become unstoppable publicly. The man who trains himself when he doesn't have to becomes the man who endures when he has no choice. He becomes unshakable, not because life is easy, but because he is ready. Not because he's tougher than others, but because he practiced being tough before he needed to be. So build that grit, not once, not when convenient, not when you feel motivated. Build it daily, relentlessly, without an audience, without applause. Do the hard thing, not for others, not for show, but because it is who you are becoming. Let the world wonder how you stay so strong, and let them never see the quiet hills you climbed when no one was looking. That's your edge. That's your advantage. That's your armor. Strengthen your focus by starving distractions. A man is only as powerful as the thing he gives his attention to. That is the measure. That is the truth. You can have all the ambition in the world, all the potential, all the raw intelligence, but if your focus is scattered, your results will be weak. Your energy will be diluted. You will move, but never arrive. You will try, but never master. Because focus is not just a skill, it is a weapon. And if you aim it like a blade, sharp and steady, you can carve through any resistance, any setback, any obstacle placed in your path. Most men do not fail because they lack talent. That's the lie we tell ourselves to feel better about our drift. The truth is far simpler and far more painful. They fail because they cannot stay with one thing long enough to see it through. They begin with fire and end in ashes. They hop from idea to idea, goal to goal, never carrying one far enough to make it real. Their minds drift. Their energy leaks. Their potential drains out, one distraction at a time. They move constantly, but progress nowhere. They are busy but not effective, active but not directed. Distractions are not just temptations, they are thieves, and they are ruthless. They do not knock, they invade. They rob you of the one thing you can never reclaim, your full, present, unbroken attention. Every time you check the noise, every time you pause your work to feed your impulses, every time you say yes to the unnecessary, you hand over your future to something unworthy of it. The cost is not just time, it is clarity. It is progress. It is power. You say, but there's so much going on. And I say, exactly. That is why the world belongs to the man who can control himself in a world designed to distract him. That is why you must become a man of focus. Because if you don't decide where your attention goes, the world will. And it will pull it in 1,000 directions, none of them your own. Focus is not just about what you look at. It is just as much about what you ignore. It is about choosing what deserves your mind and guarding it like a soldier guards a gate. If every passing noise can enter, if every fleeting thought can sway you, if every small urge can interrupt you, then how can anything great be built through you? Imagine this. A man has 2 hours to build something he believes in. Maybe it's his business, his craft, his health, his art. In those 2 hours, he shuts the door, he clears the table, he opens his notebook, he breathes, he begins. He does not fidget. He does not check the clock. He does not look for escape. His mind is a straight line. His body is a vessel for action. And when the 2 hours end, something exists that did not exist before. Progress has been made. The work is visible. And more than that, the man is proud. Now picture another man. Same 2 hours. Same potential. But he lets the world in. He starts something, then checks something else. He stares out the window. His energy bleeds in 10 different directions. And at the end of 2 hours, nothing has moved. Nothing has changed. Only time is gone. And it's not coming back. This is the difference between building and merely thinking about building. Between real movement and illusion. And the root of it all? Focus. So ask yourself, what are you letting into your mind? What are you feeding it? Are you training your mind to hold a line? Or are you letting it drift like a rag in the wind, tossed by every small tug, every shallow noise? To strengthen focus, you must simplify. Fewer goals, fewer inputs, fewer excuses. You must stop trying to do everything and instead decide what truly matters. And then give yourself to that one thing, not partially, not when it's convenient, but fully, relentlessly. That is where power lives. That is how progress is made. You must say no more than yes. You must protect your hours like they are sacred. You must reject the myth that multitasking makes you efficient. It doesn't. It makes you average. One focused hour, pure and undisturbed, will outperform 10 scattered ones every time. Choose depth over speed. Choose silence over noise. Choose mastery over motion. It's not about how fast you move. It's about how deeply you go. A man who does one thing with full presence will always outlast the man who does 100 things with half his mind. Guard your focus, because that is where your future lives. That is where your legacy begins. And that is where the difference is made, not in the flashes of inspiration, but in the discipline of attention. Hold the line. Aim your focus like a blade and cut through everything that does not serve the life you are building. Use failure as a tool, not a label. You were not born afraid of failure. That fear was given to you, taught in the quiet glances of disapproval, reinforced by punishments for getting it wrong, and solidified by a world that celebrates perfection but hides the process. Somewhere along the way, you were conditioned to believe that mistakes mean you're broken, that if you fail, something must be wrong with you. But that's a lie that keeps men stuck, silent, and shrinking. Failure is not a signal to stop. It is not the universe telling you to quit. It is not proof that you're not good enough. On the contrary, it is evidence that you started. It is the mark of the man who entered the arena, who stood up and said, "Let me try." And that act alone makes you rare. Most won't even begin. They'll think, they'll talk, they'll plan endlessly, but they won't start, because starting means risking failure, and to them that risk is unbearable. But you've already proven courage by stepping in. That's what failure means. And if you study it, if you dig into it, if you let it speak instead of silencing it with shame, it becomes your sharpest tool. You say, "But I failed before. What if I do again?" Good, then you will learn again. And if you apply what you learn, you won't just avoid the same pitfall, you'll rise higher than before. That's the secret most never understand. Success is not the absence of failure, it is the mastery of it. It is knowing how to fall without breaking. It is learning how to adapt, to shift, to re-enter stronger. The most powerful men you admire, they weren't born with perfect instincts. They made decisions that didn't work. They launched ideas that flopped. They invested in the wrong thing, trusted the wrong person, said the wrong words, but they didn't let those moments define them. They studied the lesson, not the loss. They used failure as feedback, not identity. Picture this, you build something, a business, a habit, a relationship. You put your time, your effort, your hope into it, and it collapses. Maybe it's public, maybe people laugh. You feel the sting, you feel the shame. But instead of hiding, instead of quitting, you take notes. You walk through the rubble and find the weak beams. You see where the foundation cracked. You learn what went wrong, and then you rebuild. Not the same, better, smarter, stronger. The second time, it stands. And it stands because you failed, not in spite of it. Now ask yourself, how many opportunities have you avoided because the word failure whispered in your ear? How many times have you paused before taking a shot, just in case it didn't work? How many dreams sit untouched because you feared the stumble more than you desired the summit? What if you could reverse that fear? What if, instead of running from failure, you welcomed it? What if you saw it as an instructor, not an enemy? Because when you stop fearing failure, something incredible happens. You become dangerous. You try more. You move faster. You adapt quicker. You stop waiting for perfect timing. You stop needing external permission. You begin trusting yourself, not because you always win, but because you know that even when you don't, you will grow. That kind of man becomes a force because he's not fragile. He doesn't shatter with rejection. He bends. He learns. He improves. Failure is a mirror. It does not lie. It shows you what is weak, what is missing, what is misaligned. And that is a gift, because once you see it, you can build it. Once you know where you fell, you know exactly where to reinforce. That's how mastery is made, not by pretending to avoid mistakes, but by learning how to conquer them. So use failure. Don't wear it. Don't make it your name. Don't carry it like a wound. Treat it like a map. Let it point the way. Let it make you better. Let it harden your discipline and soften your ego. No man fails who learns and adjusts. The only true failure is refusing to get back up. Everything else is just process. And that's the final truth. Failure is not the opposite of progress. It is the process of progress. It is how refinement happens, how strength is developed, how clarity is gained. Every man who ever accomplished anything real, anything lasting, walked through failure, not once, but many times. And each time, he came out with more insight, more skill, more self-trust. So stop fearing the fall. Start fearing what happens if you never climb. Let the world call it failure. You know better. It's feedback. It's sharpening. It's the cost of becoming real. And it's worth every step. Practice gratitude to build inner wealth. A man may be surrounded by wealth, fine clothes, fast cars, lavish homes, and still feel hollow when he's alone. He may walk into rooms full of applause, yet hear nothing when the noise fades. Another man may own almost nothing, live simply, and move through the world with a calm strength that can't be shaken. What separates them is not their possessions, it is their perception. It is the way they see the world, the way they carry their hearts. The difference is gratitude. Gratitude is not weakness, it's not soft. It is not some gentle sentiment reserved for those who have surrendered to their circumstances. It is power. It is presence. It is the strength to look life in the eye, with all its flaws and frustrations, and still say, there is something good here. It's the discipline of seeing value before results, of recognizing blessings while still bleeding. Gratitude does not mean settling. It does not mean giving up the chase for more, but it does mean pausing and learning to appreciate the ground beneath your feet before you demand the mountain ahead. You say, but I want more. And you should. You must. Ambition is not the enemy. But understand this, if you do not learn to value what you already have, you will poison what you eventually earn. If you cannot feel full now with the little victories, with the small wins, you will chase forever. You will run a race that has no finish line. Even surrounded by abundance, you'll live in lack. Even in a room full of light, you'll keep your eyes shut, convinced it's still dark. Gratitude is the antidote to that emptiness. It is the cure for comparison, which eats at the soul like rust on steel. It is the anchor that holds you steady when the storm of life tries to drag you under. It doesn't mean you deny the struggle, it means you see through it. It means you understand that even within the chaos, there is still order. That even in your lowest moment, you have not been left with nothing. When you stop, breathe, and name what is good, something changes. Your mind softens, your stress lightens, your shoulders relax. You stop looking outward for permission to feel okay and start remembering that the foundation was always inside. You remember, I am not empty, I am not broken, I am building on blessings. Imagine this. A man ends each day by writing down 3 things he's thankful for. Not grand things, not dramatic, just real. His breath, a quiet moment with someone he loves, a chance to try again tomorrow. Day by day, his lens clears, his spirit steadies. He begins to walk taller, not because his life has no trouble, but because his eyes now see the truth within the trouble. He begins to live, not from pressure, but from power. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly appreciated your struggle? Not just tolerated it, not just sighed and endured it, but actually said thank you. When did you last look your pain in the face and say, you are shaping me? This isn't weakness. This is warrior-level wisdom. This is the kind of gratitude that forges resilience, the kind that makes you unshakable, not because life is easy, but because your spirit is anchored. Gratitude is not emotion, it is decision. It's not something that happens to you when things are going well. It's something you choose when things are not. It's a habit, one that must be trained like a muscle. And yes, some days it will feel forced, but the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You stop waiting to feel grateful. You decide to be. You stop needing a reason to say thank you. You become the kind of person who sees the reason in everything. And slowly, you realize you are not as lost as you thought, not as broken, not as behind. You're just becoming, piece by piece, trial by trial, lesson by lesson. And the very things you used to curse, those closed doors, those late nights, those disappointments, they become sacred because they're the steps that brought you here. And here, no matter how unfinished it feels, is worthy of gratitude. Gratitude builds wealth, not just in your pocket, but in your spirit. And a wealthy spirit cannot be shaken. It can be stretched, yes, it can be pressed, but it won't collapse because it draws from something deeper than circumstance. It draws from truth, and truth sustains you long after inspiration fades. So count your blessings, not to feel rich, but to remember that you already are. To remind yourself that there's still beauty in this life, even if it's buried beneath the noise. And that no matter what you're chasing, gratitude is what keeps your soul intact while you run. That is the power of a thankful man. Not that he has everything, but that he sees everything he has and builds from there. Build momentum with daily wins. A mountain is not conquered in a single leap. It is climbed step by steady step, often with aching legs and burning lungs, long before the summit even comes into view. A book is not written in one inspired night. It unfolds line by line, idea by idea, paragraph by patient paragraph. And a life, no matter how broken or brilliant, is not transformed in a single grand gesture. It is changed slowly, methodically, quietly, one day at a time. We live in a world obsessed with the dramatic. We're told to chase big breakthroughs, to wait for lightning strikes of motivation, to change our lives in one sweeping motion. But that myth breaks more men than it builds, because the truth is simpler and harder. You don't need massive action. You need consistent action, the kind that doesn't always feel magical, the kind that often goes unnoticed, the kind that looks unimpressive in the moment, but becomes unstoppable in the long run. The man who waits for the perfect moment to begin, who waits until he feels ready, who waits until the timing is right, never begins. He stays still, trapped in the illusion that something external must ignite the fire inside him. But the man who takes the first step today, no matter how small, no matter how uncertain, he begins to build momentum, quietly, without applause, without the world watching. And that momentum over time becomes a force. You say, but it doesn't feel like much. That's the trick. That's the lie your mind tells you to keep you passive. Most real progress never feels like much while you're doing it. One page written doesn't make you an author. One workout doesn't make you strong. One good choice doesn't rebuild a reputation. But stack enough of those moments, enough pages, enough days, enough wins, and suddenly you're living in a new reality. What felt ordinary becomes the foundation of something extraordinary. Momentum isn't about speed, it's about direction. And direction is controlled by repetition. Not by intensity once in a while, but by discipline over and over. You don't need to run, just walk in the right direction every day. And you'll eventually outpace the man who sprints and stops, sprints and collapses. Because motion, when sustained, becomes compound. It builds upon itself. And it starts pulling you forward, even on the days when your strength is low. Picture this. A man wakes up and commits to one non-negotiable win, something small but meaningful. He does it before the world intrudes. He doesn't negotiate with his excuses. He doesn't delay it until later. He does it every day. That one action becomes his anchor, his fuel. It tells his mind, I follow through, I move forward. And once that first task is done, momentum builds. One win leads to another, and soon he's not pushing anymore. He's being carried by the rhythm he created, not because he was lucky, not because he was brilliant, but because he chose motion over waiting. Now, ask yourself honestly, what's one daily win you can commit to? One behavior that, if done consistently, would carry you closer to the life you want to live. Not a dream, not a fantasy, a behavior, a practice, something you can control, something that belongs entirely to you. Don't wait for motivation. Motivation is a mirage. It fades when you need it most. Don't wait for signs or energy or confidence. Create those things through movement, through deliberate action. The power is not in beginning once with a roar, but in beginning again and again until beginning becomes your nature. The truth about big changes is simple. They are just small disciplines that have been practiced for so long they finally look big. That's it. A transformation is just a result of staying with the process long enough for it to take shape. The man with the strong body didn't train harder once, he trained daily. The man with the sharp mind didn't read one book, he read consistently. The man with the steady spirit didn't meditate once in crisis. He did it when life was quiet. Control your momentum by controlling today. Don't waste time trying to fix the whole year. Don't burden yourself with the weight of the future. The only battle that matters is the one in front of you. Win today, then wake up and win again. Because the man who wins tomorrow is not the one with the perfect plan. He is not the one who waits for everything to feel right. He is the one who conquered today. Quietly, steadily, unshakably. Your future is not built by luck. It is built by the days you don't quit. So take the step, do the work, win the day. Repeat, that's how mountains are climbed. That's how lives are changed. Master the art of starting over. Every man fails. Every man falls. It's not rare. It's not unique. It's not shameful. It's part of the process of becoming. Life in its rawest form will test you, break you, bend you, humble you. It will watch to see how you respond. What separates the exceptional from the average isn't the number of failures, but the quality of the response. The average man stays down, spinning stories of why he can't go on. The exceptional man, he gets back up. This time with more wisdom, with more clarity, with more resolve. He does not rise the same, he rises better. You are not defined by what you lost. Not the job, the money, the relationship, the opportunity. Those things come and go. They are the outer trappings of a life in motion. What truly defines you is how you begin again. With what spirit, with what fire, with what lessons in your hands. You are defined not by the failure, but by your decision to rise from it. That's the turning point. That's the threshold between mediocrity and greatness. You say, but I've tried so many times. Good. That means you're still in the fight. That means you're building something real. Because every attempt has given you something, even the ones that didn't work, especially the ones that didn't work. They gave you insight. They showed you what not to do. They stripped away illusions. They taught you about the traps, the shortcuts, the lies that pull men off course. And because of that, your next beginning is not the same as your first. It's more precise. It's more mature. It's rooted in experience. To start over is not to go backward. That's the illusion. That's the lie your fear whispers to keep you frozen. The truth is, starting again means advancing with sharper vision. It means letting go of the debris of the past and walking forward with cleaner intention. Starting over doesn't erase what you've learned, it honors it. It means saying, I'm ready to use what I've earned. Imagine this. A man burns out. Maybe he pushed too hard for too long. Maybe life hit him in a way he didn't expect. He steps back. He breathes. He doesn't panic. He doesn't rush to fix it all at once. Instead, he reflects. He rebuilds. He returns to the basics, not out of defeat, but out of wisdom. He reclaims his mornings. He sharpens his focus. He cleans his environment. He strengthens his body. He begins again, brick by brick, not seeking perfection, but progress. And months later, he isn't just back. He's better. He's more balanced. He's more disciplined. He's become someone stronger than he ever was at the beginning. That is the power of the restart. Ask yourself, where in your life have you been resisting a fresh start? Maybe it's a goal that slipped through your fingers, a routine you fell out of, a vision you lost sight of. Maybe it's shame that holds you still, the fear of trying again and failing again. But what if you laid the past to rest? What if you said, that chapter is closed, but I am not done? What if you began again with everything you now know? There is no shame in starting over. There is only shame in staying stuck, in pretending you're powerless, in telling yourself the same story over and over while making no move to change it. Starting over is not weakness. It is strength. It is courage. It is the quiet, unwavering declaration that I am not done. I am not defeated. I am still becoming. That mindset doesn't just get you back on your feet. It builds something in you. It forges character. It creates depth. The most powerful version of you may not be found in your first try. It may not be in your most confident moment. It may not be at the height of your early success. It may be found in your last comeback, the one where you showed up with scars, but still stood tall. The one where the world had counted you out, but you counted yourself in. That's where greatness lives, not in never falling, but in rising again, with fire in your chest and wisdom in your bones. Master the restart. Learn to embrace it. Make peace with the cycle of falling and rising. Because the man who knows how to begin again, calmly, courageously, relentlessly, is the man who cannot be broken. He is the one who will go further than those who never dared to fall. He is the one who becomes something the world respects. Not because he always succeeded, but because he never quit for long. So if you've fallen, stand up. If you're lost, begin again. And if you've been knocked down, don't count the number of times, count the number of lessons. Then, step forward. This is not the end. It is a wiser beginning. Be the cause, not the effect. Most men live like leaves in the wind, light, reactive, and easily swayed by whatever pressure, opinion, or circumstance blows their way. They spend their days reacting rather than deciding. They float through life, waiting for the weather to change, for the right opportunity to land in their lap, for someone else to give them permission to act. Their emotions rise and fall with the moods of others. Their direction changes based on what the world says is acceptable or safe. But you were not born to be a leaf. You were born to be the wind. To be the wind is to live as the cause, not the effect. It is to move with intent, to live with direction, to shape your world rather than be shaped by it. And that shift of moving from the passive to the powerful is the most important transformation a man can make. Because most men don't lose because they lack skill. They lose because they wait. They wait for clarity. They wait for approval. They wait for someone to make the first move. But waiting is the language of the leaf. Action is the language of the wind. To live as the cause is to reclaim the power that most men give away. When things go wrong, most look for someone to blame. When things go right, they rush to take credit. That's not leadership. That's insecurity in disguise. That's dependence on external validation. And that dependency always leads to bitterness because it puts your entire emotional state in someone else's hands. But the man who owns his life doesn't need to be rescued, praised, or rescued again. He walks with a calm edge, a quiet knowing. He understands that whatever happens outside, what happens next depends on what happens inside. You say, but they treated me unfairly. They didn't recognize me. Life didn't support me. Maybe that's true. Maybe you were overlooked. Maybe you were passed over. Maybe you were judged, misunderstood, or underestimated. That may not be your fault. But here's the question that separates the leaf from the wind. Will you let that define you or refine you? Will you become smaller because of it or sharp? The man who lives as the cause of his life doesn't wait for the world to be fair. He doesn't expect others to see his value before he proves it. He becomes so focused, so steady, so undeniably valuable that the world eventually has no choice but to take notice. Not through outrage, not through pleading, but through results, through composure, through consistency. The world bends to the man who bends himself toward mastery. But to become that man, you must take ownership. Full, fearless, and often uncomfortable ownership of your words, your thoughts, your actions, your results. You stop asking, what did they do to me, and start asking, what did I allow? What did I miss? What will I do now? You shift the frame. You stop playing the game of emotional ping pong and start building your own table. Picture this. A man hits a wall. A business fails. A relationship ends. A plan backfires. But instead of drowning in self-pity, instead of raging at the unfairness of it all, he reaches for his journal. He writes what happened. He writes what he did. He writes what he learned. And from that page forward, he begins again. Not smaller, not softer, stronger. That man understands that every failure contains within it a blueprint for better execution. He doesn't sulk, he recalibrates. He doesn't waste energy blaming, he builds. Because he knows that while he can't control everything, he is always the cause of what happens next. Ask yourself, are you reacting to life or shaping it? Are you waiting for a better hand or mastering the one you've been dealt? Are you complaining about problems or creating solutions? You don't need perfect conditions, you need a perfect decision. The decision to take full responsibility for your life. That is where power lives. That is where motion begins. And once you make that shift, you no longer need to wait. You don't need to beg. You don't need to hope for a lucky break or a kinder world. Because you've stopped asking for change and become it. That is the reward of responsibility. You stop being a character in someone else's story. You stop being the product of your past. You stop being a passenger on the ride. You take the wheel. You take the pen. You write your days with intention. And what you build from that place, it doesn't shake when the wind blows, because it is the wind. You are not a victim of chance. You are not a result of what others have said or done. You are the architect, the author, the cause. So decide. Step forward. Own everything. Be the wind, be the cause. Control what you can. Release what you can't. You must learn this truth, not as theory, but as practice, not as philosophy, but as a way of being. Peace comes not from control, but from knowing what is yours to command and what is not. That distinction is everything. It is the difference between a man who moves through life with quiet power and one who is tossed about by every shift of the wind. The first has boundaries, not just around his time or his space, but around his concern. The second has none. His mind is a battlefield of everything he cannot change. His spirit is burdened with weights that were never his to carry. The world will never be fully in order. People will let you down, sometimes even those closest to you. Promises will be broken. Plans you carefully built will unravel. The weather will ruin your day. The markets will rise and fall without asking your opinion. And if your peace depends on these things, on outcomes, on agreement, on certainty, you will live in constant tension. You will wake up already anxious, because something might go wrong. And even when it doesn't, your calm will be temporary, fragile, like glass waiting to be cracked. But there is another way, a better way, a way that has carried strong men through war, through loss, through betrayal and failure and famine. This is the path of those who understand the difference between influence and control, the path of those who ask one question before reacting to any situation. Is this mine to command? And if the answer is yes, they act with full presence. If the answer is no, they release it without hesitation. You say, but it's not right. I need things to go a certain way. No, you don't. What you need is to do your part with excellence. What you need is to show up with clarity and discipline and integrity. What you need is to let the outcomes land where they will, because you did your part fully. You are not here to control everything. You are here to command yourself in everything. Control your breath. That's your anchor. When the world gets loud, when your heart races, when your anger rises, your breath is yours. Slow it, own it, control your reactions. You may not choose what happens, but you always choose how you respond. Control your effort, whether it's easy or uphill, whether you're applauded or ignored. You can choose to give your best. Control your discipline. In chaos, in confusion, in uncertainty, your habits remain a place of order, a personal fortress. Imagine this. A man is preparing for a speech. He's practiced. He's focused. But when he arrives, the room is noisy. The schedule is off. The audience is distracted. Nothing is going as planned. But he doesn't fold. He steps up. He grounds himself. He steadies his breath. He focuses on what is his. The words, the presence, the delivery. He speaks with power. Not because the conditions were perfect, but because he was. That is real control. Not the illusion of managing everything around you, but the mastery of everything within you. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your day is wasted worrying about what isn't yours to carry? About someone else's opinion? About an outcome you can't shape? About events that haven't even happened yet? What if all that energy, all that mental noise was redirected toward what you can shape? Your practice, your routine, your mindset. To worry is to misuse your imagination, to create scenes of failure, rejection, catastrophe before they've even happened. What a terrible use of such a powerful tool. But to focus, to imagine what you can build, what you can change, what you can become, that is the right use of your mental power. That is where strength lives. Let go of what you can't command. That's not passivity. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because there's a kind of man who exhausts himself trying to force the world to comply. And there's another kind, the rare kind, who understands that his energy is too valuable to waste on things that don't bend to his will. He does not chase control. He builds composure. He doesn't demand ease. He cultivates endurance. And when you master this, when you control what is yours and release what isn't, you begin to move differently. You speak slower. You choose better. You rest deeper. You walk through life calm, centered, unshaken. Storms may come, but they don't enter you. Chaos may circle, but it doesn't own you. That, my friend, is freedom. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of power. Your power. The kind that no one can take away, because it was never dependent on them to begin with. You were never meant to control the whole world. You were meant to master your world, and when you do, you become the kind of man the world cannot shake. When you stop chasing control over what isn't yours, you reclaim the strength to master what is. That's where true peace begins, not in changing the world, but in changing your response to it. Control your thoughts, control your effort, control your discipline. The rest, let it go. Because the man who masters himself doesn't need to control everything. He simply becomes unshaken by anything. Now walk forward, steady and focused, knowing your power lies within your command.